Welcome to LDC-TV with your hosts, Jake Oakes and Lloyd Brunson. Lloyd Brunson, former Hollywood performer, guest starred on over 30 national TV shows like Johnny Carson and The Tonight Show and the White House Christmas Special with Ronald Reagan. He recently authored a book on the Constitution, which is endorsed by Ron Mann, who was special assistant to President Ronald Reagan, and contains special discoveries overlooked for over 200 years. Jake Oakes, producer and music video director, writing unique and empowering lyrics, got involved with patriot activism, became an administrator in a coalition organizing rallies and the first concert in the U.S. since COVID with Colin Ray. They come together to enlighten and entertain. We present to you, Liberty Defenders of our Constitution.
Welcome to LDC TV. We appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. We have with us tonight Eric Moutsos with Utah Business Survival and Nathan Osmond. Tonight we want to discuss more on kind of our rights and the power behind gathering.
Yes.
And we've got some interesting stories from Eric and wonderful commentary from Nathan as well. To start us off, Nathan, you prepared a song, is that right?
Well, funny, my microphone's sitting right there. So
oh, just look at that.
I always ask my grandma, which song you want to sing? She says, how about the one we rehearsed? Yeah, I got a new single. It's called All In, and I released it on Dr. Martin Luther King Day because it's all about unity. He had a dream, and that dream is still alive today. And we're going to talk about that, talk about gatherings. That gathering there in front of that Lincoln Memorial, wasn't that powerful? I love that. So I wanted to make sure I paid tribute to him and to anyone that has that same vision, that same dream. They're grabbing my mic right now. I guess that's my cue, you guys. Let's go ahead and cue up that song. I hope you guys like this. It's on iTunes, so share it with the world. Here we go. It's called All In. This is live, so anything can happen. It's all good. Here we go.
Sick of all this madness, every day it's the same old news. It's time for massive action, not mass distractions. It's time we face the truth. Open up your eyes to see what's really going on. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. Let this be our song. Come on, sing it all in. We can't make it till we're all in. It takes everybody, hear the message, throw your fears away. Ooh, tell me, are you all in? Come on, everybody fall in. One by one, a new tomorrow starts with us today. Tempers fly and statues fall, there's chaos in the streets. Cities burning, people yearning for peace and unity. There's no room for hatred, put our differences aside. Hand in hand, across the land, let us all unite. Come on, sing it all in. We can't make it till we're all in. It takes everybody, hear the message, throw your fears away. Ooh, tell me, are you all in? Come on, everybody fall in. One by one, a new tomorrow starts with us today. Come on! Whoa. I got Eric Moutsos back here. Guys, this is going to be a fun show tonight. Make sure you share this out to the world right now. We're live. Come on now. It takes everybody, yeah. Woo! Listen to this message. The fate of future generations counts on what we do. Let's give them a bright tomorrow. It's up to me and you. Oh, it's up to me and you. Everybody all in. We can't make it till we're all in. It takes everybody, hear the message. Throw your fears away. Oh, tell me, are you all in? Come on, everybody fall in. One by one, new tomorrow starts with us today. Again.
Thanks, you guys.
That's great, Nathan.
And our live studio audience, too.
That's what I call a show opener.
Well, you know, I wrote it in the shower. No, just kidding.
I think that's
A
what
lot of good ideas come to you, you know?
It's either the shower
No, I
or
wrote
the
that,
John
yeah,
that
yes.
I think a lot of
I wrote with
inspiration
Tammy Lynn
comes.
Morrison, and we said, you know what? Our world needs to come together. We've seen all these riots, you know, over 2020. That what a crazy year 2020 was. But to write a song all about that and coming together, that's why we're here tonight. We're going to talk about coming together.
Yeah. Speaking of coming together, Eric was in the news for a number of things, even before 2020. But 2020 really sparked a lot of conflict in the media with some things you were doing. You had started the coalition Utah Business Revival because you felt it was very important to gather. Tell us kind of what sparked that.
Well, you could see what was happening. I mean, I got a phone call. I mean, I live down in southern Utah, and I got a phone call. I can't remember if it was during the 14-day of Slow the Spread, but it was the Salt Lake City Police Department and Salt Lake County. They put up a snitch line. Basically, you can now call on your neighbor if you're not social distancing. And so my friends that are still in the police department called me and said, we're going on these calls that neighbors are calling on their neighbors. And it lit a fire in me. And so basically if you're too close, then the police are gonna come and just show force. They didn't arrest anybody, but the fact that they showed up, that's a presence, and that's a little bit of force. And that's scary, right? And so there was just this idea that now we can't be away from, or we can't be too close. And so I called the snitch line, and I turned myself in. So I recorded myself, and I called the snitch line. I said, hey, there's rumor there's gonna be this former police officer that's gonna do a big rally on Saturday. And the dispatcher was like, well, he can't do that. And I said, well, okay, he's coming. And so basically, I did a call to action, and that's where it started.
Yeah.
And we had several thousand people show up. I think we were the first one in Utah, if not one of the first in the entire country, to gather, because I feel, you know, as a former police officer, we have certain constitutional, I shouldn't even say that, we have God-given rights.
That's right.
And the government is supposed to be there to protect those rights first, under any circumstance. And one of those rights is the right to gather under any circumstance.
Yeah, and you know, I learned something interesting recently. Back in 1789, Congressman Thomas Sedgwick, in the debate for the Constitution, when they were proposing writing in the right to assemble, he basically told them, "That's ridiculous. Why? That's just so nonsense." And if you're putting in the right freedom of speech, you know, back then they didn't have telephones, they didn't have the internet. Their way of conversing was in person. And he said that it's just given that you have that right if you're giving the right of freedom of speach.
Right.
And he basically said that it was an insult that we would even put that in the Constitution. It's just a no-brainer that we.
It's like
have
breathing.
this, right. It's just so no-brainer that we have this God-given right to assemble, and when they're telling us, no, you have to stay home. You can't even associate with other relatives.
Well, unfortunately, what's happened with the way that we have grown up, because we don't teach the Constitution in schools, that's not taught.
Nope.
I mean, they'll briefly go over things, but people don't understand their rights. They don't understand that they have God-given rights, and the Constitution doesn't give you those rights. God gave you those rights.
Right.
And the Constitution, it's supposed to tell the politicians what they can and can't do.
Yep. Why do you think they're not teaching us? That's the golden question. Because if you don't know when rights are taken.
They've passed laws restricting, actually, you can't be a school teacher and teach any interpretation of the Constitution. You can talk about the history and maybe some case law. In law school, but you can't talk about interpretation.
How can we be graduating law students if they don't know what's in the Constitution? That's
Well,
that's
what
criminal.
about police? Like we're taught
Exactly.
Police officers,
we're taught the law. Like we understand. Like, okay, this is this, but what's the basis behind it? Why?
Yeah.
And so that's where I think you get a lot of division between the police and the public, because you have a lot of agencies that don't, I don't want to say they don't care, but they're just not taught properly that there are certain rights, and not only like with the laws that are written, but just what's the decent thing to do, you know? Because we're now inundated. I mean, there's almost 10,000 federal laws. I mean, as a police officer, you can get behind anyone, and you'll find a reason to pull them over, because everybody breaks the law. And so now we're this nation of just laws, like letter. Yeah. And where's the spirit of it, right?
Yep. I used to work with the father of asset protection. And one of the biggest reasons for all these law changes is because we've become such a litigious society. You can sue anybody for anything you want nowadays. It doesn't matter if you're in the wrong or not. And we see more and more of that. In fact, there are more students in law school right now than there are practicing attorneys, so get ready for it. I mean, if you're like a disgruntled employee and you say, hey, sue and you don't pay us unless you win, well, that's better odds than Vegas. Yeah. No wonder we're living in fear.
That's
right.
Right.
And there's a lot of confusion, too, a lot of confusion about the Constitution. I like what you said. The Constitution is there to protect our rights and to protect us from government.
Well, and to keep them in check.
Yeah, protect us from government.
Yeah.
And so, even calling the first 10 amendments the Bill of Rights, I think, is confusing to a lot of people, because it's really not the Bill of Rights. Congress defined them as further declaratory and restrictive clauses to the Constitution, protecting us. And people think that, well, if it's not in the Bill of Rights, we don't have that right. But we know that's not true. Like you said, Eric, our rights are unalienable. They come from God.
And we don't talk a lot about conscience anymore. The right to your conscience. Like, what does that mean? Usually when there's something that feels off, it's because there's something off. There's an eternal law that's going around all the time. And when we violate that, we violate conscience. It's a natural law that's happening all the time. And I remember as a cop, like, enforcing the law, there was times where people like, this is wrong. And deep down it was piercing, because I'm like, yeah, this does seem wrong. It's my job. I mean, I remember writing tickets as a bicycle cop, in Salt Lake City. They'd have us patrol on the sidewalks, but it was against the law to ride your bike on the sidewalk, but we were giving tickets with our bikes on the sidewalk, right? And they're like, well, what about you?
And you can accomplish great things and not get any credit because it's not part of the quota, it's not part of the system.
Right.
I read your book, actually.
Okay.
And really interesting. That's a book you can actually sit down if you have the time and read it in one sitting and not be bored at all. But there were a couple of stories in there I thought were really fascinating. One about the gal who you got a Bible for. Could you share that with BLQ? If you share that story?
Well, it changed my life. I mean, when I worked the homeless shelter, I fell in love with a lot of these people. It was really when I had kind of a born-again moment, and I found God on a deeper level was helping the homeless. They called our squad the God Squad, because we started to talk scripture to these people.
Wow.
And people would come to me, they called me the preaching cop.
Wow.
Not to all of them. Like, it was just, there were certain times I felt like it was appropriate. But this lady, she was a real menace, like always in trouble, always doing stuff that just, and I snapped on her one night, and I just said, what are you doing with your life? And then she started to tell me about how she got to this place. And she was like this really successful chef, and she lost her family in one night, all in a car wreck. And then she was trying to stand up to find her Bible, and she couldn't find her Bible. And it hurt. It just, I don't know. It was just something that happened that night that just, it really changed.
Well, you were with her when she couldn't find the Bible,
That's right. So then the next day I went and got a scriptures, like a set of scriptures, and I had her name, because I had her name in the computer, so I had her name like printed on the Bible, embossed on it. And then I found her the next day, and I gave it to her, and she just grabbed me and hugged me and cried. And I think we're missing that.
That's a great part of the book.
That's amazing.
And it's called Dispatched for anybody. Yeah. I had it somewhere, but it's
right up on the table.
it's on my website, ericmoutsos.com.
If the book is there, could someone hand it up?
Yeah, and it's actually back there, but it's free online, so you can go to my website, ericmoutsos.com, and then just sign up, and then you can just read it. But if you have to hold it, it's on.
I think everyone should read it. It's such an insightful read.
Yeah. So when you're mentioning conscience, I actually, sitting down with Loy when we were trying to figure out the name of the show, we knew we wanted the word Constitution in there. This is the book, everyone. Dispatched. Eric told me about it. I read it. it catches your attention. It's
It's very
story
interesting.
driven.
Very
Love
interesting.
the cover too.
Yeah, conscience or conformity.
Right. So when we were discussing the name of the show, I said, we need somewhere in there the word liberty. And I brought up this point that you have brought up many times recently of how freedom is just agency. Liberty is morality plus
That was freedom. Like, you can be free and make poor choices, and that equals bondage. Or you can allow the government to make poor choices, and you're in bondage, and now there's 600,000 kids forced to wear a mask in schools because that's bondage. So freedom plus morality equals liberty. And that's in our personal lives. When we make poor choices, like we all do every day, we don't have that spirit. And so there's a spirit to liberty. And there's a spirit, like when the government's trying to force away, I always say that the devil divides and God gathers. That will always be.
Yep.
And that's why I believe it's so important that we are gathering so we can feel that spirit of liberty under any circumstance. And that's how the country was born.
Yeah. I love that book, Man's Search for Meaning. Dr. Viktor Frankl, who survived 3 Nazi death camps. And he wrote about liberty. He talked about the Statue of Liberty. He says, but there needs to be a bookend on the West Coast called the Statue of Responsibility, because you can't have liberty without responsibility.
Yeah.
And our founding fathers never called it a land of freedom, because freedom is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. But liberty comes with an acknowledgement that our liberties, our freedom, comes from the man upstairs, our Heavenly Father.
And universal, and paying heed to universal law.
Amen.
Like treating somebody like you want to be treated. Like, we're going to have a mask mandate as a governor, but I'm not going to wear it at my parties. Does that make sense?
The hypocrisy.
It's hypocrisy. And so when we see this, it's our duty to call these things out. It's our duty to gather and have big events. That's why I created the Utah Business Revival, because it was just this idea that all these they're going to tell somebody's business that they're non-essential. Yeah. They're going to say, hey, as a restaurant, you can only have 25% of your income.
And that's how they're providing for their family.
But yet the politicians are getting full pay.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And so that's why we did the Utah Business Revival, was that we were just going to kind of take over parks and work with these mayors, either directly or indirectly, kind of in protest.
Yeah.
And that's that's kind of the movement.
So I remember that first protest in Salt Lake. After that, you said, I want to make this bigger. I want to help the businesses. I want to have like an actual event. I want to have a business revival. That's when I started getting involved. Tell us a little bit more about that vineyard event, the very first business revival. Tell us about that one. That was just so phenomenal, what you were able to achieve there.
Well, and people like you, and it looked like I just did this call. That there were so many people behind the scenes helping, like get porta potties and get scheduling and get all these businesses on board and trying to find the land, trying to find. It was scary, because Mayor Julie Fulmer of Vineyard, that was scary. She was taking a risk. I mean, she took the first risk. And we ended up having around 22 Utah elected officials that came, including Congressman, Bishop. We had the Attorney General, Sean Reyes, come. Yeah. We had the I don't know what his name, Levitt of Utah County. He came and spoke. And we had, I think, around 5,000 people. And some of these businesses were selling, like, some of these food trucks that came were selling 500 plates a piece, and that's not on top of all the other ones. And so I just looked at it and I said, this is what we have to be doing. This is the most patriotic thing we can be doing. And then that's when a guy came up to me and he had like a white book and he showed me, like, this is what I do for my business, but we're shut down. And it was stages, like all these music stages, big stages like this.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it, I'm like, we're gonna have a concert.
That's where you got the idea.
And then that's
Yeah.
when
You guys have a connection.
Tell you, when you get food truck food in you get great ideas. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
It's like Jiffy Lube for the soul. But that's awesome. I love that you're doing this, because that's the power of one by one. Tomorrow, start a new tomorrow starts with us today. And that's what our founding fathers knew. They knew that if they didn't stand up, they knew that when they signed that document that they were signing a death warrant for themselves. If they got caught, they were dead men, right? I went to the church where Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. And to get to stand there and think about the words that were spoken right there, that was gutsy, because there were guys right there in that church that could have strung him up right then and there. But he had the guts, he had the faith to stand up for what he knew what was right. You know, and I love, we were talking today, we went to lunch, we talked about common sense, which is obviously not commonly practiced nowadays, but common sense helped to turn this one country around. It took one guy to write one pamphlet. I held an original pamphlet of Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and to get to hold that, and this is what turned our country around.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if everyone in this country had known their rights like Eric knows them,
Oh, yeah.
this would be a different situation. We wouldn't
Well,
have,
that's the thing. There's a guy that was from Austria. You may remember him. He had a little mustache. He wasn't even from Germany, but he led that country down a bad path. And I hate to even quote the man, but he says, "What luck for leaders that men do not think." Close quote.
Yeah, amazing. Now, Eric,
Crazy.
you were responsible for some legislation because of what happened with the Pride Parade, right? Can you tell us about that?
Well, it was basically, you know, I got out of law enforcement because, well, I kind of started calling them out on a lot of things. And when I talk about the police, I'm very careful about it because not all agencies are the same. But the far left in this country have taken over police departments, and they do it with mayors that now have the chiefs that are puppets. So then everything turns political. And so they wanted 5 of us to come and celebrate in the LGBT parade in our uniforms. And this is back in 2014. And I said, hey, look, I have no problem protecting the event, right? Like, so I switched spots with another cop and said, hey, will you be in the parade and do the celebration, leading the parade, and I'll do your security spot. And so he said, yeah, so we switched. And then they sent an email 1 hour later. I got the trade at 5 o'clock. They sent an email at 6:03, no trades. And that's within our policy.
Wow.
So then I had to send an email back up the chain, and I just said, hey, I don't believe this. I said, this goes against my belief. So I had to explain it. I said, I love all people. I love gay people. I said, if this was an abortion parade, I would ask not to be in it. And then they took my badge and my gun for discrimination. And then my story was all over national news. And that's really kind of what started my activism, because I realized I had never been in trouble in 7 years. I'd never gone to IA. I was kind of their golden child with numbers, and I was a hard worker.
You were a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
I
not
mean, I
easy.
think that
That's
year
not an easy feat.
Well, and I think I had 160 DUIs that year.
Wow.
And the next guy below me had like 80 or something
Wow. You got 160
That's
drunk
incredible.
drivers off the road.
in 1 year.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is it didn't matter, because there's an agenda by certain powerful people that if you disagree with their thought, they're going to destroy your life. And as soon as that happened, I ended up resigning because I knew. I mean, if you get on their bad side, you can fight them.
You could have sued them. You could have.
Absolutely, but I knew that I had to tell my story.
Yeah.
Because when you go into litigation, they might throw you some money and say you can't talk about
hush,
it.
yeah.
And so
Hush
I
is, yeah.
wanted to tell my story. That was more important to me.
Good.
And that's why it's free for anyone to, because I want to try to say, hey, this can happen to anyone. But the good news is that was the greatest thing, that I'm not a victim.
Yeah.
Like the way that I started speaking out on certain things, it was coming. It was inevitable. And if it wouldn't have been the parade, it would have been, kneeling down to certain groups that,
Yeah.
And then there was some legislation.
Kneeling down. Yes.
I'm just saying, like
There was some legislation too
Yeah.
that was passed.
yeah.
because
So then they wanted to
From you.
protect religious freedom and gay rights. But then there was more. Like when I called out the police quotas in my police department, and I recorded my sergeant, about the police quotas.
So he denied it until you played the recording, right?
Well, that's when. So there was a bill that was passed in 2018, and they used my story to ban police quotas in Utah, even though it still happens.
And it was okay to record back then. That was not. You weren't going against policy,
It's
right?
it still is okay to record in the state of Utah, but then the police department changed policy. It wasn't, hey, no quotas. It was, you can't record your supervisor. And so,
Interesting.
because a lot of these agencies, it's all about the money.
Yeah.
Like when I was on the motorcycle squad, they wanted 20 tickets a day.
So you could be saving 20 lives, and that wouldn't be as good to them.
Well, it's anyway, the whole thing, but it was the best thing that's ever happened to me and my family, getting out of that and being able to kind of be a free man to speak. Because when I remember one of my deputy chiefs, he's like, he's like, you don't understand. Like when you become a police officer, you lost your First Amendment rights in a lot of ways. And sadly, he's right, because all these officers, they can't speak. So I try to speak for them. That's why we had the blue rally. You know, when all the Black Lives Matter started happening, I was like, we're going to have a blue rally. And there were several thousand people that went to that one. And that one was scary because the Black Lives Matter were coming to counter protest, and I thought there was going to be a big fight.
Wow.
So before being a police officer, you had a country music career.
Yeah, kind of. It's nothing like the Osmonds, but yeah, I was pursuing country music.
You left it. It could have been something, but you left it for your family.
Well, it just wasn't the right time. You know, it wasn't the right thing for family. For me, some people can do it, like the Osmond family.
Well, they kind of laid it all on the line. It's either family or your career. They kind of drew a hard line for you, didn't they?
Yeah, in a way. They wanted me to go out on my daughter's first birthday.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, this is my daughter's first birthday.
Yeah.
And my
Evander
wife.
Holyfield discovered you, right?
Yeah. So I was on Evander Holyfield's record label for 4 years.
That's awesome.
And that's when I opened up for Colin Ray.
Right.
And I was never that great. You know, it's like, I'm like, I could do what Johnny Cash does. You know, I could do, you know, but I wasn't like a vocalist like Osmond.
I heard some Johnny Cash
Yeah,
earlier.
we heard some good stuff. You're going to perform for us. on the show, right?
I may do a song.
Okay,
I might
cool.
change my mind.
Oh,
though.
no.
I might
No,
not.
we gotta
You
go.
guys have something in common, though.
Yeah.
Colin Ray. So you opened for Colin Ray, and you did a song with Colin Ray.
Yeah, I did a song on my latest album with him called A Soldier's Life, and paid tribute to our brave men and women in uniform out there. Just the sacrifice they go through. Boy, that was a fun rocking song. Stepped off the bus and shaved my head. Oh man, it's killer.
See, I wish I had that energy.
Oh man, that was a dream come true because he was one of the 3 guys that converted me to sing country music. Because I love that country music lends itself to patriotism.
Yeah.
And that's who we are. That's why we're on this show tonight, is because we love our country and we want to see us come together. I think we're tired of being micromanaged. Yeah. I talked to a news reporter here in Utah, and off the camera, you know, he says, you know, we do our job and we tell people to wear the mask and wash their hands, but he says, we're getting tired of it. You know, they micromanage us. And so we're all feeling it as humans because that goes against our God-given rights. Liberty is where it's at, and that's what our founding fathers fought for and died for. I've stood right there on Breed's Hill where they said, don't fire until you see the white in their eyes.
Wow.
And went right there to Israel Putnam's house. Oh man, I love our founding fathers.
And Washington, you know, when that was happening, there was a plague, there was a sickness going around. I don't know if it's smallpox.
Smallpox, yeah.
They were killing legit deaths. Like 25% of the army died from this.
Yes.
And you know what they did? They kept fighting. They didn't hide.
Shoeless.
They were literally
snow.
starving, running out of food. It was freezing. They had an epidemic of smallpox.
Yeah.
It didn't stop them.
That's right. And that just shows me it's like now we're dealing with a virus with a 99.991% survivability rate, and we're acting like this.
Yeah.
And we're just giving our rights away. Here you go.
There we are. That's
And
what
if
we're
you
doing.
don't exercise, I mean, just think of a physical exercise at the gym. If you don't exercise, you lose it. And that's the same thing. If you don't exercise your right, that's why we have to gather. When they say you can't gather, that's exactly when we do gather.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a God-given right, but the First Amendment is there to protect our rights. The amendments are there to protect them. And so the First Amendment is all so
the law of the
powerful, but we
land.
just completely ignored it and given up our rights,
It's on
like
life.
you said.
It's on life support.
Yeah.
One of our founding fathers says, those who would gladly give up essential freedoms for a little bit of temporary safety deserve neither freedom nor safety. Close quote.
Franklin.
Ben
Yeah.
Franklin. We talked about him today. Love that guy. But that is so true. What happened during 9/11? We'll take our shoes off. We'll sign a Patriot Act. And what did that do to us? It took away more freedoms from us. And if we don't know what freedoms we had to begin with, then how do we know when they're gone? And that's, I think, the agenda of why we're not allowed to talk about it. We need to get noisy.
Well, and if you do talk about it, and if you do go against the narrative, you're a bad person, and you don't care for people. And it's like, hold
you're
on,
racist, or
whatever it is. It's like,
Or
hold
as
on.
I mentioned to you earlier today, you're radical.
Yeah, you're the fringe. You're the fringe. Well, how fringe was George Washington? Like, tell me how fringe he was. Tell me how fringe Abraham Lincoln was.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, a lot of people don't think to remember that our founding fathers at the time what they were doing literally was an act that was treason and they could be hung for. There were some people that supported the Declaration of Independence, but were not going to sign it because they didn't want their name to be on there. It literally was a risky move that could have them hung.
That's right. And that's what's happening right now with all of these people that have jobs that if you speak up on
Cancel culture.
they'll crush you. And that's why I'm such a proponent of now is the time to speak up, because 90% of your friends on Facebook or social media, they believe what you believe. And so you're going to say something that you know you should say, and immediately you're going to get attacked. Boom. From some friends, from some relatives, from coworkers. And my whole thing is just ignore it. Be the light, because then you're going to start lighting other people around you, and that's how we gain our liberty back.
And it's a
Someone
sign-
said,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you.
Someone said, I don't know who said this, but they said, in a nation of lies, truth is treason.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, isn't that accurate? When you live around a lot of lies, you speak the truth, hate comes
Who's
toward-
the enemy
Yeah.
right now? Right now, the enemy are people that voted for Donald Trump and people that went to the Capitol. When there was like 20 people that got into the Capitol, everybody's now branded as this, they're the enemies. It's like, hold on, let's go backwards. Like, who really is the enemy to the United States
Yeah,
of
57 U.S. senators actually voted that the Constitution does not limit you. I mean, if they actually believe that if it's not specifically restricted in the Constitution, you can go ahead and do it. And that's opposite of what the Constitution is.
Absolutely.
And that narrative goes out there and confuses people, too.
Well,
It's-
that guy with that mustache once again said, you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth.
Yeah.
And that's why fake news that we hear all the time, nobody knows who to trust. And with brother turning against brother, father against son, mother against, it reminds me of a great book that was written a long time ago that said that would happen in the final days. And we're seeing it happening. For me, it's a sign of the times. I get excited. I'm a Christian. I'm proud of it.
Good.
I love that I can stand up and speak for Jesus Christ. Whether you believe in him or not, I love that I live in a country where I can talk about my faith and invite others to know more about it. You know?
And who
That's
gave us
what-
the Constitution, right, Nathan?
What's that?
Who gave us the Constitution?
Well, some brave men, but God gave us those rights. Those came way before. That was before Adam and Eve got here. You know what I'm saying? That liberty, these are unalienable rights by who? Our Creator. They talked about God. Our founding fathers were not deists and agnostics and atheists like they're painting them. These guys were seminary graduates. They were like the preachers of their day. You know, it was this young millennial who came and talked to John Adams 42 years after they had established the Constitution. He said, old man Adams, he was writing a history book. He says, who do we owe the thanks to for everything that we have here in our country? He was there. He was an eyewitness. He says, you want to know who to thank? How, you know, and he started talking about Dr. Reverend Samuel Cooper. Who's that? You ever hear about him? Or Jonathan Mayhew? Who's that? Go look him up. Go Google him. Charles Chauncey. Who are these?
Well, just look at Article 7
These
of
are
the Constitution.
pastors.
Look at Article 7 of the Constitution. The second clause has our Lord in it. They use the Christian
Amen.
calendar right in the document that they all swore
Yes.
to uphold.
And they claim that our Declaration of Independence came straight from the pulpits of the churches of America prior to its independence. And you got to go look, I mean, word for word from sermons, but we're never taught that in school, because to do so would go against someone else's agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't start acting, they will just keep pounding on us. And I think so many people, in the beginning, they were kind of questioning, should we, okay, this 14-day period is over. How long is this going to go on now? But now they've just been beat on. They feel exhausted. But that's the moment that you need to muster up that strength and just keep going. And that's what Eric is doing. I love that you had the inspiration to do this concert. You organized the first live concert in the U.S. since COVID with Colin Ray. We've got a picture of that.
There it is.
And you,
Look at you there.
sang and performed with him.
Yeah, well, it was, I mean, singing next to him, it was really, I'm like, okay, now is the time to go to the bathroom.
You're
because-
great. I've heard you sing, Eric. You're being very modest. You have
We need to
a
hear him sing
great.
tonight.
Yeah, well, I don't
Yeah.
know. But the point was, it was such a special night because we had got canceled twice. We got canceled in Kaysville by the city council. I mean, they were on board one day. As soon as the pressure came in, Then all of a sudden they're going to turn sprinklers on Colin Ray.
Yeah.
Then we were going to move it to.
This was national news. Too,
Yeah.
wasn't
Then
it?
we were going to move it to Grantsville, Tooele County, and then their county commissioner stepped in and got a judge involved, and mind you, when the when they canceled the Kaysville and they were going to turn sprinklers, Lagoon opened up the next day, or within the
next door.
which is like a rock throw away, and no one said anything about that. But Lagoon's getting a lot of money.
Wow.
So then in Tooele, a judge came in and said, if you hold this concert, you're going to jail. But yet at Tooele County, they were having their own racing event where vendors are coming and thousands of people are coming, not social distancing, no mask. It's just funny how COVID can just jump over. It's so smart, it can jump over Lagoon and all these events,
Yeah, we just know
and
how
kill
smart-
everybody here.
So with that racing event, you had a call to action that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, after the judge did what they did, and the property owner said, "Hey, I can't do it." So that next morning, I went to the racing event and did a call to action for that night that we were still going to take over a park. And so we took over a park, and we had 2,500 people show up, and I don't know how many businesses, maybe 50 plus businesses show up, and we just shopped. And we played all 16 number one hits of Colin Ray.
Oh, cool.
And then 2 weeks after that, we went down to Iron County and put on this show.
Wow.
It was a pretty big show. We had probably 8,000 people.
I don't know. There was thousands. There was over 5,000 easy.
Yeah.
And it just showed that we have to continue to fight.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, it's over. We lost everything that our founders did.
Yeah.
If we don't fight now.
Right. I really enjoyed your music at the concert. That was a lot of fun. Is your voice filling up tonight?
I don't know,
Oh,
Jake.
please, come on.
Oh, you gotta sing
Come
the
on.
song.
Let's do it.
Good song.
You guys want to hear him sing? Come on.
come
Make
on.
some noise out there. Yeah.
Let's hear from our in-person audience. Give a round of applause.
Is that mic on?
Not enough. We need some more.
So this one, is it on here?
That's a good one for a minute.
So this one's kind of like a Christian. It's a Christian song called "I Surrender," and the reason why I just found it last week, but the reason why I like it so much is because it just shows that we need to bring God back into this, and so this song is called "I Surrender," and so hopefully it'll work. Here I am, down on my knees again, surrender it all, surrender it all. Find me here, Lord, as you draw me near, desperate for you, desperate for you. I surrender, I surrender. I wanna know you more, I wanna know you more. Drench my soul, mercy and grace unfold, hunger and thirst, a hunger and thirst. Arms stretched wide, I know you can hear my cry. Speak to me now, speak to me now. Like a rushing wind, Jesus, breathe within. Lord, have your way, Lord, have your way in me.
like a mighty storm, stir within my soul. Lord, have your way, Lord, have your way in me. I surrender, I surrender. I wanna know you more. I wanna know you more.
Woo! Awesome. That was worth tuning in for, folks.
That was great.
Right there.
Thank you,
We
Eric.
can end the show now.
Yeah. Woo!
So yeah, that was one of my dreams at one point to do that, you know. But then I became a cop.
Well, now you're doing what you're meant to.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. You're inspiring so many people.
Well, I just try to turn it to God, just to say, look, like how we got this concert off was because God helped us. I mean, it was miracles.
Well, that concert was a miracle.
It
in
was like
itself.
the spirit was so strong because so many people. It's like we need this, and then all of a sudden they just show up.
Oh, and then the weather.
And that's what faith is. People don't understand. People are like, "Hey, you just got to have faith." What does that mean? What does faith mean? Well, faith is action in what you believe.
Yes.
You can't just sit there and think, "Oh, things will just get better." We're going to have good legislation.
What does that book say about faith without works? It's dead, right? I mean, you talked about how they threatened you to go to prison. Well, the New Testament could be called letters from prison. Think about the good that, you know, these apostles and these followers and people that dared to die for what they believed in were willing to do, and the good now, we're still talking about them on our show tonight. You see what I'm saying? I love Stephen Covey. He used to live a stone's throw from here. He always talked about leave a legacy. That was one of his 7 habits of highly effective people, is leave a legacy. That's what we're trying to do here with this show. It's what you're doing here with your book, with your concerts. And it takes just one person. It took one person to stop those tanks in Tiananmen Square. You know, it takes one person to just dare to do the right thing. It takes one Patrick Henry, you know, to stand up and say, give me liberty or give me death. And you're doing that, brother.
Rosa Parks. I mean, it's like
Rosa Parks.
It's all throughout history. It's like the person
love her.
But so many people were mad at her. So many people on both sides, they were mad at her for what she did. But it's like
She disrupted
those are the things that we have to be doing right now.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, we're going to lose it. I'm telling you. And people do not want the United States. And I'm just not saying people. This is a spiritual war.
Yes.
Starting from before the foundation of the earth, and it was over freedom and control.
Yeah.
And the same war has spilled onto the earth, and we are fighting the exact same thing. And if we do not put our faith into what we believe, nothing will work.
I think we've gotten into this habit of asking the government for permission. Is it okay for me to do this? Is it okay for me to have people over for Thanksgiving? Can I have my family over for
Christmas?
Are you kidding me? For Christmas, Thanksgiving? Can you have your family over?
Yeah.
Well, what have we come to? And I want to point out the 10th Amendment. Let's go ahead and show that. The 10th Amendment says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So if it's not spelled out specifically in the Constitution, that doesn't mean we don't have the right. They were just specific things they wanted to make sure our government does not infringe on.
Yeah.
But when there's any sort of gray area, if it's not spelled out, it's to the people.
Yeah. Our government does not have unalienable rights. The people have unalienable rights.
I think we've forgotten who serves who. Who works for who? The government by the people, for the people. And the minute we forget that, we're in trouble. Thomas Jefferson said this quote, listen to this. He says, when the government fears the people, there's liberty. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny.
Yeah.
And we
that's-
need to know
that's
where in the
we're at.
Constitution we can show our legislators and our representatives that they're overstepping their bounds.
Yeah.
That document's so important. We need to
Most
know the
of them.
documents so that we can hold their
Most
feet to
of
the
them.
fire with it.
Well, even in good old Utah, I mean, all these laws that are getting passed, I mean, it's like one of the bills I saw was you can't stop emergency powers, or the emergency powers can finally stop once 1.7 million people are vaccinated.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just, they're just making rules up as they go.
And we let them do it.
And I would almost say, like, right now in Utah, because so many people are not engaged, they could say, hey, we're going to have a king. We're going to vote for a king. I'll bet you we'd get thousands and thousands of votes. Yeah, we should have why not have a king? I mean, that's what's happening.
Sure. Well, they're creating a lot of damage. It's interesting that the last line of the Fifth Amendment says, nor shall your private property be taken for public use without just compensation. But the state constitution, it's even a little better, where it states, nor damaged without just compensation. So they are damaging the businesses, they're damaging our lives, and they are creating liability for
What
themselves
about the
based on their
kids?
oath of the state constitution, that
What
they
about
should
our children?
compensate everyone that they've damaged.
What about the children that are seeing this, that are growing up in this?
They're creating trauma.
Absolutely. It's child abuse.
Yeah.
And people don't understand. It's like,
And the government's liable, based on the Constitution, to compensate those people they've damaged.
but it's also our fault. It's also our fault for not knowing our rights.
Yeah.
For not standing up immediately and saying, oh, nope,
Yeah.
no thanks. Because if everybody
Yeah.
just said, oh yeah, no thank
Yeah.
you. Because this whole coronavirus, it should have been a memo. Should have been
Yeah.
a one-page memo just like they did in South Dakota. Hey, here's what's going on. This is what we recommend. This is who should be maybe stay inside if they choose. Other than that, go live your life and
Yeah.
be safe. Wash your hands like anytime.
Otherwise, we're violating your rights, and we could be culpable.
So that's, so anyway.
And, you know, once I got involved with the Utah Business Survival alongside you, I started out this year just complaining on social media, just complaining about what they were
Like we still do.
they were doing, and I was like, I need to get involved. I need to put my money where my mouth is, or at least my action. I need to actually take action, do something. But you changed my perspective that I can't put all the blame on government. We're responsible.
It's our fault.
That was an eye opener when
We
you
never
said
went
that.
to
Our
we
ignorance.
never went to our caucus meetings. Think about this. There was a letter sent out by the LDS Church about wearing your mask. Okay, everyone, oh, we got to wear a mask. We got to wear a mask because there was a letter that was sent out. How many people listened to the letter that was sent out to go to your caucus meeting for how many years? I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't. I went
They
to
were
one.
encouraging us to do this.
Right. Well,
And
what
they
about
still
that?
do. They still do.
What about that
Yeah.
letter? Why can't we listen to that? When the letter was literally to say, hey, you got to elect good people that aren't going to come in and abuse the church or churches. I don't just mean
Most
the
people
church.
don't even know what a caucus is. I mean, the Communist Party has a caucus. Are we supposed to go to the Communist
I'm
Party
just
caucus?
I'm just saying, like, we have got to start thinking for ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, there was a great book that was written that says, when the spirit ceaseth to strive with men, then cometh speedy destruction. How fast has this happened? Who do we have to blame? We deserve who we get. And if we're really voting, not that who knows really what happened behind the scenes, but more is coming out. The truth is out there. The thing is that we deserve what we get if we don't stand up and speak. If we don't stand for what's right, if we don't stand for the Constitution, which this show is all about, you're defenders of it. Why is it important, Jake, to defend the Constitution in your mind? Why are you doing all this?
I decided, you know what, these rallies are important, but I feel like the biggest issue is ignorance. People don't know what it's like the Bible. Everyone claims to be Christian, but how many people are actually opening up their scriptures on a daily basis? How many of us that say we defend we support the Constitution are actually opening up the Constitution and familiar with it? I was guilty. I could spit off a couple of the Bill of Rights. Well, that's it. I wasn't that familiar. And I said, well, that we have an issue with ignorance. Let's get people excited about the Constitution again. But ignorance is the biggest issue that is why history repeats itself. And there's that phrase for a reason, because we literally keep repeating history because of ignorance.
Yeah. And Eric, what pushed you through when you were threatened with prison? What was it?
Oh, the jail?
Yeah, jail.
Well, I mean, it was just like, look, if we're going to go to jail for having a concert, we've already lost it. So it's like, let's just go now, right? I mean, ultimately that's it. Like, if we're threatened to gather over 10 people, that we're going to have a $10,000 fine.
Yeah.
Let's just get it over with.
Wow.
Right? Because it's either now or later.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. Like
And so nothing happened to you, right? You didn't go to jail.
Well,
you
we
didn't
didn't have the show. We didn't have the show there.
But you
know?
would have.
Yeah, I would have gone to jail for it. I don't want to go. Jail stinks, man. I mean, it smells literally. It stinks. and I've taken hundreds of people to jail, and I think it's the worst. I think it's an evil place. You know, it's not a place that anyone should be in.
No.
So I don't know. It's like now's the time, because people think, oh, this will just kind of pass. Really? Because we're a year into it now.
It's getting late.
We're a year into it. Now we're talking about taking guns away. And now we're talking about
Just wait till summer, and then
yeah. It's just a mask.
Oh, now just wait for the vaccine.
Yeah, it's just a vaccine.
Oh, once the vaccine's here, oh well, we got to wait for what else? I don't know. But
I interviewed a guy on my podcast last week he went to prison, and now that he's out, it was over a tiny little oversight that even the FBI gave him a letter of recommendation, and then 3 years later, because of laws in the state that he's from in Arizona, they came knocking and indicted him. He served 2+ years in prison. He talks about it now because he goes into the belly of the beast. And I said, you know what? In a way, we're all in prison.
Yeah.
We're all doing time. How are we doing our time? You know, I took my son up to California. It was in 2019, right before all this madness. And you know where I took him? To the gravesite of Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan.
wow.
And I said to him, a quote. I'm sorry, I got emotional. I said, this man said that liberty is never more than one generation away from extinction.
Wow.
We did not pass it on to our children through the bloodline. It must be fought for, protected, and passed on to them. And I pointed at him to do the same. Otherwise, we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children of what life was once like in the United States when men were free, close quote. We're seeing that.
Isaiah warned us. We've been told to study Isaiah. Well, a lot of people don't realize that President George Albert Smith, in a temple dedicatory prayer, said that the references to the law of the Lord in Isaiah was the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
And if we start looking at, especially Isaiah 28, if we look at it through that vision of the Constitution, we can see that we have really failed. It's hopefully not too late, but we've really failed. And like Jake said, studying the document, understanding the document itself. You can go to a constitutional studies course. They don't teach interpretations of the Constitution. You've got to get the document and go through it like the scriptures and read it over and over.
How did you learn the Constitution?
Well, I felt really guilty for not reading it. So I started reading it. It was the most mentally difficult thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And I just kept pushing forward, and then I got to the President's Oath. Article 2, Section 1, last verse, where I read what President Obama had just recently said to the world, that the Constitution was fundamentally flawed. And I thought, he just swore to uphold and defend it. And then he trashes it like that. So as I kept reading, I found things. You know, you're told to search the scriptures. I found things that just hit home. And so if I got bogged down, I would just keep reading until I found something that connected with me. Yeah. And every time I pick up the Constitution, I find some new connection. It's like revelation. It's unbelievable. It's like scripture. So I encourage people to read it. Don't get bogged down. Just keep going until you find something that connects. Read through the whole document, the Declaration of Independence, and do it again. Mark it up, and every time, I promise, every time you do that, you'll find something new, and it will change your life. You'll see miracles in your life.
Well, you swore to defend the law. You took that oath, and then to walk away from it.
Can you remember? Can you remember the oath?
Well,
the constitutional oath.
It's basically you have got to protect people's rights, right? That's pretty much it.
But the Constitution is actually in the police oath, isn't it?
Yeah, and you swear to uphold. So does all the, all of the representatives that we have.
Wow.
And when we go against that, I'm all about backing the blue when they actually defend what they swore to uphold.
And that's what you were doing as a policeman. That's what you were doing. You were protecting people and defending the Constitution.
Yeah, but there's some times when I was at first, I was guilty of things. You know, it was like they would say in lineup, hey, the first person to go get a yellow car, you know, so now would get a couple hours off because they would incentivize, right?
Yeah.
To go and get these tickets.
Wow.
And
so that's right.
So it's like, but you don't know how I found all of these things, and I'm not. I wish I was more educated when it comes to all of these things, right? Because none of us are to where we should be.
But the Spirit, I feel like I read your book. I feel like the Spirit was working with you. You were open to that. You were open to your conscience and the Spirit.
Well,
one of the stories I thought was really incredible is the man that was always drunk when you confronted him, but there was one time when he wasn't. Can you share that story?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Yeah, so he's from Texas, I believe, or no, now he lives in Texas now, but he was always drunk, and finally I saw him sober. I'm like, what's the occasion, you know? And he's like, oh man. I'm like, what brought you to Utah? And he said, God brought me here. And we were in Pioneer Park, and I said, I just had this thought. I'm like, I'm going to challenge him, you know. And they were playing a Joseph Smith movie up at the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, and I challenged him to go watch it. And I went and picked him up afterwards, actually. And he got in my car, and he was just crying. And he's like, man. So I gave him my card, and I hadn't heard from him in like months. I hadn't seen him. And I got a phone call from him, and he was back at his mom's house, and I believe it was Texas. And he just said, hey, I just want to let you know that I found your missionaries, and I'm getting baptized.
Wow. Changed his life.
And we still talk. And
Didn't you have kind of a battle in your mind whether you should do that or get involved with him?
At that point, no, because I had already been doing that. And people would always say, you can't talk about this as a cop. And it's like, once you have an experience with someone where you can actually see God change their life, there's no going back.
But you could have easily just avoided that opportunity.
Well, sure,
but you didn't.
yeah, and there's
and we all have opportunities that we sometimes pass on.
But here's what I'm saying: the separation of church and state was never intended to take away religion out of people. It was intended so that the government couldn't force one particular idea on the people. That was it. President Garfield, he was a preacher. He baptized 51 people on a Sunday when he was the President of the United States.
Wow.
They held church in the Capitol.
That's what I'm saying.
Story. That's in your book.
That's what I'm saying. And it's like, people don't understand that we have to be, God is the answer. Like, you know, I remember my very first class in law enforcement. I was just a cadet at the community college. And a man named Chief Randy Johnson came to us. And we didn't have patches because we weren't hired yet. And he just said, who are you going to work for? Who do you work for? And people were raising their hand. Well, I work for the community. I work for the city. We work for you. And he just rolled his eyes. He's like, let me tell you something, and never, ever, ever forget this. He said, you work for God. Never forget it. And I remember just getting chills, like, oh my gosh, like this is a calling. But the sad thing was I never heard another word about it until one of my friends from the police department committed suicide. And they did his last call, like over the radio, kind of like a respect thing. Like they called his badge number 3 times and they said, Godspeed. And I remember just thinking, oh, so we can talk about God at the beginning of a career and at the very end of the career, but nothing in between. But I'm convinced that the answer is God. Like if we turn to God,
Amen.
And I'm not talking about just a religion. I'm talking about I'm talking about Jesus Christ. I'm talking about, even if it's not Jesus Christ, if we the principles, if we turn to like really loving people, that's the only way we're going to be saved. And so why don't we talk about it? Because it's not politically correct.
Well, there's a reason there's 10 commandments in our courthouses that they're trying to get rid of. That is the American covenant. That's the covenant that existed when Adam and Eve were here. It's the covenant that existed when William Bradford and those pilgrims landed. They made that covenant. The people that lived here, the ancient natives, they had the 10 commandments. Look at that. See, we have things that are coming out of the
Got the
ground.
Ten
It's on the
Commandments in
Discovery
this
Channel. Watch this. There's
publication
so
of the
many things
Constitution.
happening. But that's the thing. There was an American covenant. George Washington made that covenant. When he was sworn in as president in New York City, he opened up the book to Genesis chapter 24. He put his finger on a verse that talked about this being a land of promise, this being that Joseph's inheritance was over the wall. He knew that this was a land of promise, a land of liberty. See what I'm saying? So, but we don't know these stories because we're not taught this in our history books. They're trying to erase history, but guess what ISIS is doing too? They're trying to destroy history because if you don't know the past, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Ignorance.
Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of history, Eric saw the importance of documenting. We need something more than just repeatedly getting together, which was very important. But we need something more. We need something that's going to stand time. And you were inspired to create a documentary. Is that right?
Well, it was my friend Steve. Like he brought this. Hey, we should do this. I'll follow you around. So we put together this documentary. We just wanted to film everything, and so we put together a documentary called Non-Essential. And it exposes the hypocrisy in government, but it also brings hope to people that we are the answer. And so we've been going around, we've had, I think, probably 25, 30 showings in theaters that are willing to stand up. And because they're trying to crush, these theaters are dying because there's no new movies.
Right.
And they're saying you've got to space out. So we've been going to theaters that are willing to stand up, and we've been filling them up.
And no one's been arrested yet for...
No.
Good.
You've been invited out of state to
Yeah,
show.
some people in Missouri saw our documentary, and you can go to nonessentialfilm.com and look at the trailers. Are you going to play a trailer?
Yeah.
And but it'll be on my website. So if you just go to ericmoutsos.com, you can sign up, and then we'll send out a code here soon once everything's finalized. But
Right.
But I guess you want to watch it now, or do you
Yeah,
want
let's go ahead
check this out.
and let's check out this trailer for this amazing. I've been to a couple of the showings and it's just phenomenal.
We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
Yeah, the governor announced his directive called Stay Safe, Stay Home.
The state of Utah has now seen its first death related to COVID-19.
A big impact to businesses.
A new order mandating which businesses need to close and which are considered essential.
We can mandate it by law.
Not essential. I think you misunderstand the meaning of the word.
Hundreds of people plan to rally in downtown Salt Lake City tomorrow night.
A former Salt Lake City police officer is the one behind the rally and the group Utah Business Revival.
The group calling for businesses in Salt Lake City to reopen is organizing a walk for freedom tomorrow in southern Utah.
That rally's over, but that message is not, and they have a few more things up their sleeves.
Meanwhile, a local group is planning a country music concert in defiance of the state's ban on gatherings of more than 50 people.
As it is now moving the very controversial Colin Ray concert from Kaysville over to Grantsville.
A judge has decided it cannot.
Criminal charges are possible for those who violate Saturday's order.
The event will give non-essential businesses a chance to interact with the public again.
People should not be walking around with masks.
The controversial Colin Ray concert has found a home.
I have faith that the Constitution will be saved, but it will not be saved in Washington. It will be saved by citizens of this nation.
That's pretty epic.
Yeah. So we've been going. So some people in Missouri found the documentary and watched it, and they wanted us to come out. So we did the Missouri Business Revival. So there's a group that started. So now they're doing the same thing there. Colorado I just got back from Colorado. They started up a Colorado revival. And so they're going to get Colin Ray to go out and do a show there.
That's awesome.
And so my hope is that people will see this and be like, oh my gosh, we can do it. And so what we did was we just called the sheriffs.
Yeah.
We said, hey, are you going to arrest us? Nope, we're coming.
Okay.
Wow. You know, and that's kind of, that's
great.
because now you put these people on the spot. You got to make a decision. Are you going to arrest us or not?
Yeah.
And you can tell the people who are on the side of freedom and liberty.
Wow.
And that's what we have to do. And then when we find out who they are and identify them, we not need to remove them out of office and vote them out, because we don't need a revolution. We need a restitution. That's what we need. We need
Are you going to do a big concert here in Utah coming up in the summer?
Oh, absolutely. We got one planned in Vernal.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Vernal's going to do a full business
What's the date?
revival. I think it's July 2.
Is it a Colin Ray concert?
Yeah.
Wow.
July 2nd.
You're going to be
Do you
singing?
need an opening act?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Actually, last time
I'll shine your guitar.
Colin Ray opened for Eric.
Yeah,
last
absolutely.
Time.
Yep.
That's so great.
You know, the Brunson brothers opened for Colin Ray too. Did you know that?
He is. And Colin Ray, I'm telling you, he's an inspired man.
Yeah.
Like he really is a true patriot, and he understands all these musicians. I mean, think of how many musicians are out there just dying right now. Yeah. It's so sad. It's so wrong.
They usually die anyway, but
I'm just saying, like, it's their livelihood.
Yeah.
Like, how can you do this to people?
Yeah.
He loves Utah. He lived here. I helped him move into his house.
Really?
When he first moved out here, which is
Wow.
pretty cool. I had to do that so I could open for him. But you have to do what you got to do to pay your dues, in this biz. But the thing is we became good friends, and he came out here because of one of his grandchildren. But he loves Utah, and even some of his own band members are from Utah. So he loves this state. I'm so glad that he's coming back. It's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Vernal, put it on your calendar.
Let's make it happen.
They're working on it. So yeah, they're
That's
working
awesome.
on it. So that's what we've been doing.
Well, we're going to conclude here in a minute, but I just want to tell everyone that this book, Dispatched, really is phenomenal. It catches your attention. It's story driven. It's broken up into these really inspirational stories. There's actually, you jump through so many different emotions here, from some sobering moments, but also some humor. There's a couple funny parts in here. But check out his book, Dispatched. Before we close, we want to thank our sponsor, Osmond Home Loan.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those guys.
That kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So Nathan, you've started.
We're just saving the world one mortgage at a time.
So you provided us this little ad. Let's check that out.
Oh yeah, this is on online. You'll see this on my Instagram page. I had to. You're a mortgage man. Well, the Osmonds have all been in the real estate for so many years. My grandpa started Osmond Real Estate. I've been investing for years. And now to get to carry on the Osmond name in real estate is pretty cool. Our founding fathers, before life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it was actually life, liberty, and property.
That's right.
I love history. In fact, you couldn't even vote in this country unless you owned a piece of the rock. You had to own land in this country to be able to vote. So I think they wanted everyone to be fully invested in America.
Yeah.
And that's the American dream.
Yep.
So we love that we're helping people to do that.
That's great.
OsmondHomeLoans.com.
OsmondHomeLoans.com, sponsor of tonight's episode. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for taking out a Friday night and spending this time here. I think no matter anyone's background, whether you're Black Lives Matter or you're Utah Business Revival, the Constitution needs to be our uniting piece.
Yes.
And that's what we're doing here on LDC, Liberty Defenders of Our Constitution, trying to get people excited and inspired about the Constitution again. So every Friday night, 7 p.m., we're going to have special guests. Make sure you tune in. Follow Eric on social media.
Until you can't anymore.
Right.
Well, Utah
Cancel
Business
culture.
Revival was
What?
already shut down. You had to get Mike Lee involved on that. But Well, we thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and we'll see you next week.